one. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Infrastructure and Economic Development Committee meeting for April 13th. The voting members of this committee are myself, Councillor Thiessen, Mayor Clayton, and Councillor Blackburn, who will be joining us a little bit late. The other members of council are more than welcome to take part in conversation, though, of course. To start, we've got our downtown rehabilitation update with Mr. Hoyen.
Come on, video. There we go. Thank you, Chairman Bressie. Let me have a look here. Just get my notes in for me. So the ball is starting to roll down here pretty quick. Where's my notes? I made notes yesterday. Where did I put them? Oh, okay. I'll run off my memory. So things are starting to happen. The contractor will be starting the installation of temporary water services within the downtown core starting tomorrow. That will run till April 30th. On next Monday, the installation of temporary traffic signals at the intersection of 100th Street and 102 Street at 102 Avenue will begin. Last Friday, we had a pre-construction session between Greenacre Ventures, ISL Engineering, Canelson Sand and Gravel, and Aquaterra, and the City of Grande Prairie representatives. And we worked on a lot of the issues coming up. I attended the Downtown Association Strategic Directions Committee meeting yesterday. And basically I continue to meet with businesses in the downtown core as required. It's interesting how many new businesses are coming online, coming into the downtown core, some in phase 3, some in phase 4. It's very enlightening. So it's just a short little update, and if you have any questions.
Great. Any questions? Could you just remind me, what's the latest guess on the first day that we'll have road closures downtown?
Okay. Basically, the projected date is less than 3 weeks away. Okay. It sounds like the intersection of 100th Street and 100th Avenue tentatively will be closed May 3. That's the Monday. So at this point in time, that's what they're looking at. So we're having a meeting tomorrow to finalize the traffic accommodation plans for the rerouting of traffic. April 23rd, the variable message boards will be going up, advising of the construction upcoming and what will be happening. So yes, May 3 is the tentative go date.
Great, thank you. Don't know about everybody else, but that came a lot quicker than I thought it would. Mayor Clayton.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. Mr. Hoyen, just a question or a comment, I guess, from I was on the downtown strategic planning call yesterday as a business owner downtown, and it was identified that the contractor this year, Canelson, had gone around and distributed information to the businesses downtown, and I wondered if there's a possibility. It's just a comment. I think that there's good information in the brochure and the marketing tool. I wondered if things like that might be available to access for public online, and possibly, if the document can just be made a virtual document. Although it's really pertinent to the businesses downtown, it may be of interest of other people in the city, and I thought there was good information, and so possibly something for consideration to have it available somewhere for other people that might want to look at it. Thanks.
The brochure will be placed on our update site, so
that's perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions? Great. Well, thank you again for being here. I know these updates have been short so far, but I know that once things are in full swing, we're going to be really thankful to have you here available for the many questions I'm sure we will have over the summer. So thank you again for making yourself available. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and continue on. Bye-bye.
Great. Thank you. And next up, I have Director Glavin for his service area report.
Thank you, Chair Bressie. We'll start with economic development and business grants that we launched last week were the train grant and barrier-free grant. We've already had several inquiries and a few applications. As well, with the return to step one of the COVID recovery, we've also spent a lot of time with restaurants over the last week, helping them with getting set up with temporary patios, which we have waived the fees on as we did last year. And we have very quick turnarounds for anybody who wants a patio that has a complete application and a relatively straightforward design. As well, in the Serving Up Knowledge sessions with the Chamber, there are sessions each of the next 3 Thursdays, starting on the 22nd. The Regional Labor Market Needs Assessment was released last week. It was completed with the Chamber, the County, the MD, and the Alberta Immigration and Labour Department. We've received several inquiries for more information on that and have brought on GPRC as a partner now. In energy and environment, the Earth Day scavenger hunt is well underway with 308 participants. It ends on April 21st. For anybody looking to sign up, you can get that on our website. City Scrubs starts April 18th with supplies being delivered to schools this week. GP Grows registration starts tomorrow with the activity for pickup on April 30th and May 1st, and there's a maximum of 1,500 participants. Council will also be receiving invitations this week if they'd like to participate to help distribute supplies. Eastlink CHP final walkthrough and commission is scheduled for April 21st, so we should have everything online before the end of the month with that. In engineering services, we've posted the Stormline Flushing and Video Inspection Program tender, the Local Rehabilitation Program Phase 3 tender for Mission and 100th Avenue on 108th, as well as the Road Rehabilitation and Overlay Program Phase 4 that will take care of Lakeland Drive in Lakeland and Crystal, as well as some projects in Crystal Estates and Crystal Heights. We've also posted the Bear Creek Outfall Repair tender for a number of locations along the Bear Creek. The Intersection Improvement Program in Engineering, Design and Construction Supervision for a few different areas around the city, including 92nd Street and 80th Avenue, 92nd Street and 72nd Avenue, and 108th Street and 84th Avenue. In transportation, we're well underway with our sweeping program, with most arterials having seen one pass. As well, the signal crew is working on some lights, specifically Mission Heights and 84th Avenue intersection. In parks, we've completed tree clearing for engineering services in the Bear Creek Outfall program. So we've had, just given the less snow and a little earlier jump on spring, we were able to have our crews complete some work we'd otherwise would have tendered. As well, we've completed our hiring for all of our seasonal staff in parks. So we're ready to go for May with kind of the beginning of the summer season. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Director Glavin? All right, looks like we're letting up easy this week. With that, I'll move on to item 3.3, and that is Bear River Dam Assessment and Impacts with Mr. Harvard.
Thank you, Chair Bressie. I'm here this morning to introduce Chris Duncan and Alistair James from SNC Lavalin. SNC Lavalin undertook the Bear River Control Structure Inundation Study and the Dam Safety Review in 2020, and they will present the key findings of their report. Chris and Alistair, if you go ahead.
Thank you, Mike. I'm going to present my screen here. So that's visible to everybody?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, thank you, Mike, and thank you, Council, for inviting us to present our study to you today. My name is Chris Duncan. I'm a geotechnical engineer with SNC Lavalin. Joining me today is Alistair James, Principal Geotechnical Engineer with SNC, who will assist in answering any questions you may have at the end of this presentation. Alistair and I inspect and review numerous dams throughout Alberta every year, supported by a multidisciplinary team of hydrotechnical, structural, and mechanical engineers. Both of us visited Bear River Dam last fall to conduct an inspection at the start of our review. So as you know, the Bear River Dam and control structure is owned and operated by the City of Grande Prairie. It is regulated by Alberta Environment and Parks, who ensures that dam owners take active responsibility for the integrity and safe operation of their dams. Bear River is classified as a significant consequence structure. So there's 5 levels of dam consequence classification, which range from low to extreme, and significant is the second lowest on that scale. Some background info on the dam: it was built in 1948, reconstructed in the 1970s, and the gates were replaced in early 2010s. For the reservoir, your current management routine keeps the water levels at or below 652.4 meters. The design maximum full supply level is a little bit higher at 652.58 meters. And just for comparison purposes, the dam crest is or the low point of the dam crest is at 655 meters. So we're a little ways below that. The main findings of our study were that the control structure is in satisfactory condition and there's no critical dam safety deficiencies that require any immediate action. Based on our inspection, review, and analysis, the dam and spillway are safe and stable under normal operating conditions. We also reviewed the consequence classification of the dam for both fair weather and flood conditions and determined that it resulted in a consequence classification of significant, which is unchanged from previous studies. We assessed numerous flood events for the dam, and we recommend that the inflow design flood is the 1 in 500 year flood event, which the spillway has sufficient capacity to route. So there is no need for additional bypass structure. We have some recommendations on the gate operations. During winter, we recommend that both gates are maintained about 30% opening to reduce ice loading forces on the gates and trunnion. We looked into the zone of influence of the reservoir or the control structure. So under low flow conditions, which defined as less than a 5-year flood event, the zone of influence extends about 800 meters upstream of the control structure. That's just before the 108th Street bypass bridge. Under high flow conditions, we've determined that the reservoir or the control structure can influence up to 3 kilometers upstream. So, on this slide, we've got a visual representation of that. So 800 meters upstream is right around here, so basically the start of the reservoir, and that's our influence during low flow conditions, less than a 5-year flood. And during high flood events, 3 kilometer mark is right up here, so just kind of on the outskirts of the city. So our recommendations for gate operations. So as we discussed in the spring, summer, and fall, your operations team is free to open and close the gates as necessary or as desired to achieve your reservoir elevation of 652.4 meters. As I said, in the winter, we do recommend that they're open 30% to reduce the ice loading on both the gates and this center concrete trunnion. For your operations team, we developed some gate operation kind of guidelines to help them manage flood events to avoid overtopping the dam. So we recommend keeping the gates during floods, we recommend opening the gates at about 30% to maintain the reservoir below 652.58. If we reach that number, if there's a larger flood and the reservoir is still going up, we recommend opening the gates at 50% once we reach that point. And above 654 meters, we recommend opening the gates fully to avoid overtopping the dam. So if you remember from before, the dam low point of the crest is 655 meters. So if the reservoir gets up to 654, we do recommend opening the gates fully and avoid overtopping the dam, which could cause a larger failure issue. We looked into, like I said, many different flood events for significant consequence classification structures. The Canadian Dam Association recommends that your design flood should be somewhere between the 1 in 100 year and 1 in 1,000 year flood. So for Bear River, we're right in the middle of that at the 1 in 500 year flood that can safely be managed by the spillway. In our analysis, we looked into quite a few flood events that I just wanted to point out a little bit. So we looked anywhere from the 2-year flood, 5, 10, 20-year flood up. This yellow line on the chart is the 100-year flood event size. Gray is 500-year, orange is 1,000-year flood. And we modeled all the way up to what's called the probable maximum flood, or PMF, which is a much larger flood event than most things are designed for. The PMF design is only required for extreme consequence dams. The PMF is, I guess, can be defined as it's the most severe flood that may be expected to occur at a certain event. So it's based on meteorological data and statistical analysis. For Grande Prairie, that PMF is based on a 24-hour rainfall event of 210 millimeters, about 8 inches of rainfall. So that gives you an idea of the scale of that flood and the likelihood that it is to occur, and why most structures are not required to be designed for up to that level. So we did some modeling of the downstream flood routing, starting at the 100-year flood and working our way up. So on this chart, the brown line is the channel bottom, yellow is the 100-year floods, blue is 1,000-year flood, all the way up to red, which is our PMF floods. So as you can see on the chart, the gray figures here are the traffic bridges downstream of the control structure. So as you can see, all these bridges are safely able to pass up to the 1 in 1,000 year flood beneath them, which is what most bridges in Alberta are designed for. Almost none are designed to pass floods up to the PMF, which our modeling does show that if you do get a PMF flood, it would overtop a couple of the bridges. But again, I would just like to highlight that's very unlikely to occur, and most infrastructure in Alberta is not designed to handle a flood of that size. All of our modeling did show that the flood routes are contained within the Bear River Valley corridor. All right, I'd like to open up the floor to questions now.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions? Just let me get my screen back. So I see Councillor Plott, Thiessen, then O'Toole.
Thanks, Chair Bresty. Thanks for the presentation. I appreciate it. I'm just wondering if you could go back to the one slide that was showing the flood events and kind of the lines there. And just let me know, I think it was just the one before the flood routing of the actual events. Can you just give me an idea of where we were at a few years back when the dam almost got overtaken with water, when it was right basically up to the top, and I think we had it pretty much wide open. So can you just give me an idea where we were at in that event? Is that 100 year, or where would that line up on here?
Mike, do you have any? Do you remember what size of flood that was?
Thank you, and through the chair, that event was less than a 50-year event on this flood chart here.
Okay, so that was less than a 50-year event. So hearing that scares me a little bit, because it sure seemed when you were standing there watching it that if it was a lot worse than that, it was going to come over that thing. But I guess I just was hoping for that perspective. So that gives it to me. Thank you.
And I see City Manager Galante.
Yeah. Okay, Chair Bresci. So just to provide a bit of context about that event, what happened back in 2018. Although as Mike said, it was a relatively low in the IDF curve or scale as a 50-year event. We didn't have any warning. That was the situation. So there was a rapid melt. Temperatures moved from -10, -15 to almost +20 in a matter of a few days. And there was a rapid melt on the upper areas of the watershed. And we didn't have any advanced warning system installed at that time. So we were kind of caught by surprise with a lot of water coming from the north. When visually people detected that and Rotary Campground was underwater, we had to really go into emergency mode and operate the gates to 45%. That is what is kind of the point that we start flooding downstream infrastructure, like flooding trails, for example, at 45%. At 50%, we start compromising the Pioneers village near the museum. So that is our kind of a hard point in terms of controlling damage downstream. After that event, we installed an advanced warning system upstream on the basin. So we have sensors right now to alert us with 12 to 36 hours, kind of depending where on the basin is experiencing the rapid melt. We have some advanced warning, and we can start maneuvering the gates and releasing water as needed. So that's the context about that. It was a relatively low event, however, no warning at that time. Situation is different now with the system installed. Hope that helps with the explanation. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Horacio. That does help a little bit. Thanks a lot.
I think I had Councillor Thiessen and then O'Toole.
Thanks, Chair Bressi. Thanks for that context, Mr. City Manager, as well. I really appreciate that. I'm going to piggyback on that for our presenters here. In regards to the spillway structure, it was mentioned that we could open it up to 100% at different flood levels. Now, obviously, downstream impacts are damage to trail systems, potentially our museum. My question is around the actual structure. Is the structure able to withstand the pressure of the water flows coming through at 100%? And have you done an assessment on the immediate impacts, such as like the skate park or the playground in Muscogee Park, if we were to ever open up the spillway more than 50%?
And I'm not sure who wants to take that.
I can address the loading question. This is Alistair James. The structure is capable of taking the loads that when the gate is fully open, the water loads. We haven't done a geotechnical or other assessment of the impacts of flooding on downstream infrastructure. This was purely addressed at the dam. However, the flooding has assessed which structures would be and which buildings might be affected. And Mike might or Richard might want to answer those.
Is there anybody else that wants to jump in?
Chair Bressi, if I could supplement.
Yeah, please.
As part of the report, we did prepare a map which shows the zones that will be inundated during different flooding events. During the largest event, the skate park would see water as well as the pavilion and the museum. However, Bear Creek Pool does remain outside of that area.
Thank you. Just sort of a follow-up question on that. At what capacity of water flow that we would be opening from the spillway would those structures be impacted? Would that be at the 55%, the 70%, the 100%?
Thank you, and through the chair. That would be based on the amount of water that we're passing at that time. So not necessarily the percentage the gate is open, but how much water we're seeing from upstream. I apologize if that was not the most clear response.
No, that's okay. This is a difficult thing, I think, for council to get a gauge on. And a few years back when we saw the floods and there was cautions about opening the spillway to 40% because we had never opened it to that capacity before. We were worried about damage to the structure and also damage to the infrastructure that is in Muskogee Park right off the spillway. So I was just seeking to get a bit more understanding on that. And I think as we progress through this, we'll probably learn a bit more. But yeah, 1 in 100 or 1 in 1,000 year events, I think might impact that. But I think what you're saying is the level of flows that would impact the creek bank. I guess that would start flowing over the creek bank and then into the other infrastructure. Thanks.
Yeah, and I see Ms. Sally or Mr. Harvard, either one of you, please go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Richard, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As part of the monitoring system that Horacio had mentioned earlier, we do also have a flow and a level sensor set up down near the pavilion so that we're able to, as we're opening, we can see what our water levels are coming up to see how we're affecting that downstream water levels and to see where we are and, you know, how close we're coming to if we need to get transportation or how things progress. So we do have an idea of what we're seeing when we open the gates.
Awesome.
Great. I think I had Councillor O'Toole next.
Yeah, I experienced the last time we had a flood here a couple of years ago that I think everybody was talking about. I spent a lot of time down there with all of our engineering team and support staff. The water level come right up probably within about 4.5 to 6 inches from the top of the structure, which was getting a lot of us a little bit nervous. And there was a discussion had about putting a kind of a bypass somewhere on the side of the dam so we could have like a culvert that would release some of the pressure as well, because the opening of the dams just did not allow the proper amount of flow. But then that causes a lot of concerns too about too much water going through, causing erosion. But what's your thought of having a third gate or possibly some large culverts that we can close off and detour more water into the stream? Or is there even a need for it at your expertise?
This is Alistair. Just to any increase in capacity of what water you can pass is by its very nature an increase in safety. But the capacity that the spillway has is adequate and reasonably adequate, and in our opinion is sufficient for the structure that is there. I'm not sure what was the approach for the gates and opening the gates at the time, and but if the level had been lowered earlier and these sudden rises can be a problem, then I presume that the more of the water would have passed earlier, and that would have certainly have helped. But the 2.5 meters freeboard is there for this protection as well. But in the event that you're getting close to overtopping, the gate has to be fully open.
Yeah.
And that is the prime benefit. Having a bypass, I can't say I would advocate that it is necessary, but it would provide additional capacity. And as I said, it's a belt and braces approach. It would certainly make it safer, but it is costly.
Well, I think the city has gone above and beyond for all the monitoring services that we've provided. I know the Alberta environment is pretty excited that we have all these things in place. But something that you may want to do is present this information to the county because they seem to think that we weren't doing our job. So anyhow, thank you very much. I appreciate all the information you gave us. And it's nice to see that you know, we're all good. We don't have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars to do anything to the reservoir the way it is right now. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions for committee? A couple questions I have is One is, do we have an idea of what kind of lifespan we can expect out of this dam? Is there a point that we're going to have to replace it in a few decades? And if so, how many decades would that be?
We would have to take a more detailed assessment. We are looking at doing some more inspections and monitoring of the spillway this summer. We had some issues getting fisheries approval to get access and fully dewater the spillway. There is some cracking. There is a design life for any structure. I don't know what the original design life was, but I suspect it was somewhere in the order of 75 to 100 years. It is approaching that 75 years, but many structures far exceed that. I would anticipate that with maintenance and care and upgrades as necessary of certain elements, there are many years of additional life in the overall dam.
Great. And then another question I had was reading the full report. I noticed that there's a recommendation to remove some vegetation, including in that area of potential problem vegetation. There's some big trees that I suspect some of our residents really appreciate. Can you just tell me a little bit more about why that's important, what type of vegetation might need to be removed, and when that might happen?
I will leave to the city as to the when,
Sure.
But with regards to why, the roots of trees particularly, but anything that has a large root structure, changes the nature of the embankment fill. So the roots dig down and in the short term actually provide a positive reinforcement. But at some point they're actually weakening the earthworks, and you can never really go back in and repair them. Those organics will decay at some point when the tree dies, and the deeper they've got by the time that they are cut down or die, the more damage they've done to the embankment. And then you'll start to see possible piping through the dam, and failures due to water coming through the dam itself. And I can actually say from a very recent experience, I was out at a dam last Thursday that experienced a very similar problem because of vegetation, and was in imminent need of repair and was close to failure. But if they're removed while the roots are small, or you just keep it to very small bushes that are less than 1/2 meter root depth, then you shouldn't have any problems. But it's strongly advised not to have anything that goes beyond that. So,
and then what's the advice in terms of, I mean, looking at the map, we've got a few fairly large pine trees that I don't know how old they are, but they're already large. Is there a point where taking it down, you're just going to leave that decay faster? Is it recommended no matter how big that tree gets, you cut those trees down, or?
It's always better to get rid of them. And then you can excavate the area out while it's dry and replace with well-compacted clay fill materials that are in accordance with the original specification. And then the remediation is done. The dam is back to its original state.
Yeah, Mr. Galante?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. As part of the inspection, the north wing wall probably notices is cracked in the longitudinal vertical cracks on the bottom of the spillway area near the energy dissipation system where we have gabions. So those trees, we're planning to remove those within this spring season and to alleviate the pressure on that wall. There's water being infiltrated there, and it's one of the priorities we have for this area. So it will be just landscape and grass, maybe some small shrubs, but nothing with deep roots that may allow water to infiltrate and put more hydrostatic pressure onto the north wind wall.
Thank you. Mayor Clayton.
Thanks, Chair Bressi. I think this report is filled with great information. I just, in my opinion, I don't want council to take off the importance of the previous discussions that we have had. in regards to the entire watershed that is involving Bear Creek. And so whether it's upstream from the north and the capacity concerns and flood mitigation that we need to consider, water that comes from the north watersheds, or whether it's the impact of the downstream water that impacts through the city as well as into the county. The overall water system is still a concern. It's still something that we, in my opinion, need to keep as an advocacy priority. It's great news to hear what our spillways capacity is and that it is doing its job, but the overall water management system of the Bear Creek corridor is still, in my opinion, still needs to remain a priority for council. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Somebody willing to make a motion, even if it's just to receive? Councillor Thiessen, I'm assuming that's a motion to receive for information?
Yeah, I'll make that motion, Chair Bressie. And just speaking to this, I want to thank our representatives from SNC-Lavalin and our administration for the work that went into this, the background, the history, and the looking forward approach. Really appreciate that, and really appreciate the knowledge presented in this. So, and I agree with the mayor. This has got to stay important to us, especially when we're dealing with 1 in a 100-year flood. It seems every 5 or 10 years. So. We need to be mindful of this and protect our jewel of our region, which is our Central River Valley and Muskogee Park. So with all that being said, happy to have this information and happy to receive more information.
Great. Any conversation or debate on that motion? In that case, I will call it to question.
Chair Bressie, can Councillor Thiessen vote verbally, please?
Yeah, I was wondering if I need to get in there. I vote to approve. In favor. You.
Great, and that motion carries. And I'll echo what Councillor Thiessen said. Thank you to everybody who did the work of this very big report. We appreciate having a lot more confidence in our infrastructure that's so important to us. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Then I will move on to the Hughes Lake Energy System. And sorry, I need to click around to see who that. My apologies. That is Mr. Sheldon.
Good morning, councillors. Thank you, Chair Bressie. We're bringing a recommendation this morning that committee recommend council direct administration to commission a pre-feasibility study to investigate both the technical and economic viability of energy systems for the Hughes Lake area, exploring the most economical options to provide electricity and heat for industrial users, and approve funding to a maximum of $200,000 from the Future Expenditures Reserve. For background, Hughes Lake refers to about 19 quarter sections of land to the west and north of the airport. Council adopted an area structure plan for this area in 2018, and that shows a transition from the current agricultural land use to an employment district. So that'll be general industrial and business parks as the predominant landform. Since establishing the area structure plan, activating investment in the Hughes Lake area has been a cornerstone of the city's industrial attraction strategy. And that strategy requires investment in core infrastructure such as water and sanitary, transportation, and energy. As we investigate those infrastructure requirements, on the energy side, we've had a significant consultation with the energy industry and academic stakeholders. All indicate we have a unique advantage in that this is a large greenfield site, meaning that there's no existing infrastructure to work around or retrofit. So that gives us opportunity to establish modern infrastructure, which considers both the costs and the environmental impacts of various sources of energy. And the sources of energy, that includes traditional options and alternative energy sources. So there's several established and emerging technologies within solar, geothermal, hydrogen, carbon capture and storage, cogeneration, those all have potential economic and environmental merit. And the reason that alternative energy should be considered or is being considered is the benefit to industry and the resulting demand that will present. Federal carbon tax, that strategy is forcing industry to reduce or completely rid their greenhouse gas emissions. So you'll be hearing the term a lot, environmental and social governance. So that's a key driver now within industry or investment into industry. So industry will be looking to the municipalities that are able to partner with them in an energy transition. So with that in mind, the proposed pre-feasibility energy study allows the city to make an informed decision in balancing the responsibilities for development, infrastructure costs, and environmental stewardship. So the study would assess technical and economic feasibility to determine the extent of the opportunity for an alternative energy source, and it would estimate the corresponding investment required in comparison to a traditional system. So really what we're investigating is there a cheaper option to our current electricity systems, and what, if any, cost premium would come with also reducing carbon emissions at the same time. So to speak to the timing of the study, the outcomes of the proposed study would be a significant component of an overall infrastructure investment analysis for Hughes Lake. That's currently already underway. And in order to allow that analysis to be completed before next budget deliberations, we recommend supporting a request for proposal and funding of a pre-feasibility energy study for the Hughes Lake area structure plan. So we're happy to take questions on the recommendation. It does cross a few departments. So I see there's some other people on the line from other departments, such as energy and environment. So I welcome them to jump in on any of the responses as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Before we get to business, are there any questions for administration? I see Mayor Clayton, then Councillor Thiessen.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. Just a quick one. In regards to economic viability studies, Mr. Sheldon, to your knowledge, are any of the surrounding municipalities doing something similar in this area?
Thank you. So through Chair Bressie, there are some municipalities near us doing some specific studies. So for example, Woodlands County is doing a specific geothermal study. I'm not aware of, I understand the rumor is that the county also has a geothermal study perhaps underway, but I'm not aware of the details on that.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Thiessen.
Mayor Clayton took my question, but I'll just chip in. I think their study is in the Dimsdale area for the Dimsdale Industrial Park, and they're looking how they can tap geothermal into building an industrial park out that way. I had a simple question since Mayor Clayton took my question about our regional players. In the report, it mentions a whole bunch of alternative energy sources. One of them not listed is wind. Now, I don't anticipate wind's a big energy driver, but is there any considerations to explore wind potential?
Sure, through the chair. Yes, I would expect that would be part of any energy analysis or any study we do. We would end up with pros and cons of a wind study, sure.
Okay, and I guess another question just popped in my head. I'm going to try to figure a short way to ask this. In regards to the Hughes Lake area structure plan, and based off of the conclusions of this, would we be looking to encourage people to do their own combined heat and power systems or carbon capture programs within the Hughes Lake area?
I see Director Glavin hopping on, so yeah, go ahead, Director Glavin. Sorry, you're muted.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. It's actually the first part of Chris's question that's already been answered. I just wanted to add a little additional context. I believe that wind might be excluded specifically from anything in Hughes Lake because of radar interference with the airport that can be created by turbines. So I'm not going to outright say that it's not going to be included, but don't be surprised if it's not included in the strategy, if that's the case, which I believe it is in that area.
Okay. No, thank you. Awesome. Yeah, no, I don't even think I need my second question answered. Thank you.
Okay. I see Councillor Minhas, then Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you, Chair Dylan. My question, I think Chris took it half of it, but like when we're talking about the new renewable energy and like example is the Thai water, they were already talking to compressed gas thing. Is there any other interest in that area for industrial or like carbon tax, not tax saving, like because federal government carbon tax stuff? So we are competing with the county in that area, or this is our own way to do it, and some industrial like interested into Wheels Lake area to do the industry up there?
So, sure, through the chair. So I'll respond to the, I think, Councillor Minhas, the question being mostly competing with the county for the types of industry. Is that your question?
Yeah, that's one question, but the other one is any interest in this area to bring in the new industry, like when we tax capture, carbon tax capture and stuff, somebody is interested in this area?
Yes, certainly. So through the chair, one of the results of the study that we would be asking for is ownership models, funding strategies, and potential partnership opportunities. So that would include potential opportunities to partner directly with industry on many of the sources. Carbon capture would be a significant one of those, yes. Speaking to, I guess I'll speak high level in terms of competition would be with many municipalities. More so the competition created by the demand that industry will have for some of these new technologies. And the key driver of that, again, is just carbon emissions and reducing or ridding carbon emissions.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Blackburn, and then I'll probably get myself in, but I see Mayor Clayton in the queue too.
Thank you, Councillor Bressi. $200,000 for a preliminary study is probably adequate, but I fear that once we start looking at individual options one after the other, that some of them might be very complex. And so what's to keep us from going down a rabbit hole that uses up the money studying one or two when there are several alternatives to consider?
Right, so through the chair, that's excellent question, Councillor. That's the exact reason that we're proposing the study that we are. It is a potential that could happen. If we don't do a study to this level, to this class estimate, we may end up in that rabbit hole you speak of. The intent of this study would be to compare the newest technologies against traditional and determine and actually have an outcome where we can make a decision point on and have the rationale for exploring one or two options, but being able to have a decision point and cost and time certainty to explore one source as the primary source. It's exactly to avoid chasing all of them and spending money on all of them. That's the outcome of the study, is what we would be after.
So two questions I've got is, one is, what would be the expected timeline of the study if council authorizes? When can we expect to see results back?
Thank you, Chair Bressi. So we would be, to be honest, we would have to, our intent is to have an answer and results in order to make an informed decision by the fall. So that is a little bit aggressive. So I am worried a little bit about the timeline. most companies will be looking for a 5 to 6 month window on a study like this, and we would look to do that in a 4.5 to 5 months.
Great. And then my second question is, I know with a lot of heat-based energies, whether they're combined heat power or geothermal, it's the transmission infrastructure is often the expensive side of it. Has there been any conversation with Aquaterra and their water servicing study to see if there's some synergies in terms of installing hot water pipe alongside the pipes they're putting in to do cost savings? Or so is Aquaterra part of this conversation?
Thank you, Chair Bressie. So no, Aquaterra, we have them on an alternative servicing study for water sanitary. They have not been part of the discussions on potential direct heat, but certainly they would be welcome to be part of any request for proposal.
Yeah, and I guess to just say, I hope that as they're thinking about it, there's thought if they do put water in, it's a lot cheaper to put a hot water pipe in a trench you're already digging for other pipes than it would be to dig your own. So I just hope that as we're looking at their water report, that this would be in the back of our brain to be thinking about this as well.
Sure, and if I may add, sorry, we are at this point, the reason for the timing of the study is exactly that. We'd like to do the investigation at the same time of all the services that would be required for infrastructure in Hughes Lake.
Excellent, great. I'm glad to hear that. Mayor Clayton.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. I'm curious, Mr. Sheldon, to your knowledge, is there any granting opportunities out there? We know that most provincial and our federal government are always looking for alternative energy opportunities, and I'm curious if we've explored all opportunities for grant support in funding this study.
Thank you. And through the chair, yes, we have explored and continue to do so. I know there have been other municipalities receiving community partnership grants, for example. At this point, those efforts have been not fruitful. Alternative energy, it appears as though most of the grant funding has shifted a little bit, and what's being funded is the technology or new technology, and it seems to be moving away from feasibility studies at this point. So we continue to look for those opportunities.
And go ahead, Mayor Clayton.
Sorry, if I may just follow up. Can you tell me, something's in my brain that somewhere somebody along the lines has asked us or approached us in regards to support with Northern Alberta Economic Development. I know they typically don't have funding opportunities available, but I'm wondering if there's been discussions with them to see if there's something that they can do to partner with us for lobbying potentially the provincial government for funding on this.
So through Chair Bressie, so yeah, our discussions to this point have been through NADC and looking again, yes, there's been no funding allocated, but looking for support for the project.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Plott, and then Councillor Thiessen, and then Councillor O'Toole.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. Chad, this might actually be not for you. I'm just kind of curious when I look at the first two things, the outcomes, the most beneficial and viable sources, and then the comparison benefits. Our city's got an environmental department that's done a pretty good job, I think, of identifying some things we could do internally on our Aquaterra thing that we're switching over for combined heat power. How are they going to be involved with this study? And the reason I'm asking that, I just feel like we do a lot of these external studies, and a lot of time we have a lot of very educated people within our organization, and I just want to make sure they're involved in this process. Can you explain how they'll be involved, or maybe they can jump in and explain? But I want to make sure they're involved with this process too.
Sure. So through the chair, and there she is. Yes. So the Energy and Environment Department has been hand in hand on this. It's across many departments, engineering included, planning included. So Michelle and her team, yes, are very involved and in a lot of ways, leading the energy side of it, yes. Michelle, did you want to add to that?
No, just Chair Bressie, I think that, yeah, we're as Chad has indicated, we're quite involved looking at different options that are available and really working closely with Chad and Rebecca to try and understand what our options are.
Thanks for that. And I guess I just want to kind of echo similar to what Councillor Blackburn had. I want to make sure we don't go down too many rabbit holes too on this one. I think this report seems like it's pretty high level on all of them. But I'm wondering when it's saying a modular development approach beginning with the 5 megawatt, is that by every geothermal hydro? Is that by every segment again on that analysis, or is that specifically geothermal?
Through the chair. So that would be, yes, for all of them, the concept of start us off with 5 megawatts and allow us an opportunity, present a plan to us, how we can phase in additional as capacity is needed.
Okay, thank you.
And my apologies if I messed up the order of what I said before, but I think I had Councillor Thiessen, or I think I had Councillor O'Toole, then Thiessen. That's what it is now anyways, Councillor O'Toole, then Councillor Thiessen.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the wind power. It was mentioned earlier. Back in my first term, we had a company come in, do a little bit of a research project for a wind turbine that we could put on homes and stuff like that. And they had a couple failures, but the bottom line was there wasn't enough wind in the city of Grande Prairie to actually function anything larger than maybe a home style. And I think we have a bylaw that if you want to put one of these homes generators on your house and put it into the grid, there's a bylaw for that, and we can do it. But on a grand scale in the city, we don't have enough wind. Now, gentleman Henry Ham has one on his house, and he reduces his power bill to some degree. But I don't know where it would be like at Hughes Lake, and that would be an interesting project to find out if it would be doable. But we don't have the mountains close by, so we don't have the wind currents and stuff like that. And it may be a success. It may not be something that we want to go to. So just throwing that out there, just because there should be some reports somewhere in the archives of the City Hall on the process that was done at City Hall. I think we had one at the South Fire Hall, or the North, yeah, South Fire Hall. So anyhow, there are reports available. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you, Chair Bressie. I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole here. My comments on the wind was for not necessarily the home system or even the larger systems, but something in line with like the blue solar energy system where it's a wind and solar turbine, and it doesn't go higher than 20 feet as far as its construction. So that was just my question about wind. I guess my question for administration right now for Chad is, so we're looking at getting this report all submitted to the next council, hopefully before the next budget. But with Aquaterra's final report coming in July, to me it seems like we have a lot of time to review over Aquaterra's study and how it may impact any future energy I guess, creation that the city might do for a system inside the Hughes Lake area. But my question is really, what's the rush on the timeline? Obviously, we don't want to go down too many rabbit holes here. This is typically a 5 to 6 month process. We're going to try to hammer it down in about 3.5 to 4 after we get it through procurement to find the consultant. Why is there such a rush to put this in front of the next council when we could probably have a more deliberate approach in a 4-year budget plan?
Yeah, Mr.
Okay, through the chair. So yes, I guess 2 things. One is a strong desire to be as competitive as possible with other municipalities. And given that Hughes Lake was, and the area structure plan was adopted in 2018, with this focus on industrial attraction. It was just that desire to get in on the new technologies and draw the line in the sand, essentially, to make our decision, knowing that it will take time to do, to implement, put the infrastructure in place. And so that was, there was a desire then to match that with the next budget deliberations and budget cycle. It's really as simple as that.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. No, I appreciate that. But at the same time, this is the information that's going to inform the next council on how we're going to develop Hughes Lake. So I think it's imperative that whether we're going down rabbit holes or whatever, that the next council gets a clear picture of the types of energy systems that we can employ in the Hughes Lake area that fit with the guidelines of the Government of Canada, the direction that they're going for environmental and sustainability. And also the direction that we're going, as far as you said, building the line in the sand. But for me, this report is imperative for the information on how we're going to invest into that area. So I do have concerns about rushing it through and then putting it on a Green Council's agenda plate for budget right when they get elected. So I'm not in any, I want to see green energy probably as much or more than anybody on council. But I don't want to rush this because I want to make sure that we're doing it right and we're making sound investments and government decisions, that are going to positively impact the development of that Hughes Lake area, especially if we go towards green source energy. So, I don't have a say as to the timelines, but I'm not in any rush to have a consultant put in about 2/3 of the time to produce a full product. I'd like to see them put in 100% of that time. Thanks.
Sure. Thanks, Chair Bressie. I think, Councillor Thiessen, our ask will be to please complete in about a 4-month. We may actually, through the RFP process, be told that the level of study that you're requesting and the class estimate that you're requesting, we cannot do in 4 months, and we may actually be told we'd love to do the study. However, it will take us 6 to 7 months. So, sure. Now, our end goal here is to get proper, appropriate information so that whichever council can make an informed decision.
Thank you so much for that, Chad. Really great to hear.
I saw Councillor Plott.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. Just kind of similar to Councillor Thiessen's, I guess, just if we're setting us up for a future council. I guess the one thing when I look at what this report doesn't achieve is, and maybe it will be layered in there, Chad, but it would be nice to have in perspective of what other municipalities and counties potentially are doing, right? And so I'd like to have a spitball of, hey, this is great, but if we're the only one jumping off of this cliff, I don't know if that's where I'd want us to be, kind of thing at that point. And so that would be important for me. And I think if we're going to set this up for future council, it'd be kind of also knowing within these areas, once we define them and we say, hey, we really need to go into geo, or the report really leads us to, should go to solar or whatever it is, then we also look for municipalities that are doing that and how it's looked for them so far. Because my gut is on a lot of this stuff, I think patience might be our best approach and let industry figure a lot of this stuff out, because I do think that's what's going to happen over time. Having said that, it's nice to have a plan for industry. And this might help us get there. I just don't want to be the municipality that does this report and then it leads to another report and it leads to another report, and suddenly we're $5 to $10 million in and there's no industry interested in it. I just want to be cautious of that. So long-winded, I guess, if we could somehow have it where if we identify what source of energy we think makes the most sense, to also start looking at what municipalities or regions are doing that, so we could start modeling that as well.
Sure.
Sorry, City Manager Glatte, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to kind of clarify a little bit the analogy and the complementary nature of this energy stream that we're trying to investigate now for Hughes Lake. And I think that, the ultimate goal will be when we go to the next strategic planning retreat in February 2022 with the new council, is to have a comprehensive view of that area of Hughes Lake. And in parallel, we're running these two streams, like servicing on one side, alternative servicing for water and sewer. And then on the energy side, we wanted to start, big picture and narrowing down what would be the potential sources, again, at a relatively high level concept, to further investigate if the decision at that time is to really, put some resources in Hughes Lake and develop that area. So water and sewer is more concrete, more solid, hard infrastructure to decide in terms of alternative methods to encourage development there. But the other big component is energy, because for an industrial purpose, you all know that it's one of the largest cost centers, right? Electricity and heat. So depending on the type of industry. But we're trying to explore now on this energy stream what would be the feasibility or the likelihood of maybe the top 2 or 3 sources. And I think this study will give us that initial concept to say, okay, these are the most likely sources here. If wind is a no-go because it's relatively, the resource is not there, it's in the south of the province, or there is potential a combination from geothermal and solar, or maybe the decision is just connect to the grid. And the grid has a generation cake with some coal and some natural gas, and that means more emissions, and then the industry will have to pay more carbon credits. So it's this balance of going traditional energy, just connect to the grid, probably it's the cheapest solution, but not the greenest. And the intent is to have this information available for council during the retreat, to have a robust conversation about not only the hard services, water and sewer, but the energy stream. So that is kind of the intent of this. And if we can have this report done by the end of the year, by January even, I think we'll meet the objective of having this information ready by February when we go to strategic plan. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Or is there anybody willing to make a motion? Councillor Thiessen.
There we go. Thank you, Chair Bressi. I would move that committee recommend council direct administration to commission a pre-feasibility study to investigate both the technical and economic viability of energy systems for the Hughes Lake area and approve funding to a maximum of $200,000 from the future expenditures reserve. Sorry, I paraphrased that, but as the motion as presented.
Great. I don't see anybody jumping in right away, so I'll just say as I listened to the discussion, I came into this meeting kind of not quite knowing where I'd sit on this, and as I listened to it, I think that this really is an exercise in de-risking the next council. I think that there's a lot of risk with going ahead of it with the energy system, especially if it's using newer technologies. And as has been alluded to, there's a lot of risk of putting a lot of money into a rabbit trail that ultimately goes nowhere. But I also think there's risk to not exploring alternative energy systems. I think there's risk to climate, environment, all of that, but there's also risk to getting left behind by other jurisdictions that are adapting and being proactive to where global investors are going and where federal regulatory systems are going. And so I think there could be risk either way the next council goes. And I really think that this study lets them understand that risk more. And I think this will set them up for better decision making. So I think that this is a good study to do. I'd also highlight that if I'm recalling right, 2020 was the last year we were paying for annexed land to the county. And so it seems appropriate that this would be a good year to start investing and developing this land now that we're done paying for it. So I'll be supporting this. Mayor Clayton, I saw.
Thanks, Chair Bressi. I'll leave my discussion for the council table, but I will be supporting this motion. Thanks.
Great. Any other conversation? In that case, I will call this to the vote.
My voting came up, guys.
And any further business on this? Great. Well, thank you, Mr. Sheldon, and the rest of our administration that I know were here ready to support us. We appreciate your work. And I think that brings us to outstanding items list with Director Glavin.
Thank you, Chair Bressie. The Economic Incentive Programs item is still on track for next meeting.
Great. Mayor Clayton.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. I didn't jump in quick enough on the Director Glavin's roundtable, but I just wanted to comment that I had an opportunity to speak at Sunrise Rotary this morning, and the bulk of my presentation was about things and that the city is currently doing and opportunities that we're providing throughout the community. And I just wanted to give kudos to Director Glavin and his many departments of the things that are creating significant impact within our community. And as I reported to the Sunrise Rotary Club, things from economic development to infrastructure, there's a lot happening in our city that will impact the economy going forward, but also major projects that the community is very excited to see. So I just wanted to thank him and his department for the hard work that they've been doing. Thanks.
Councillor Thiessen.
Yeah, thank you. I just comment to Director Glavin. We still have one on the outstanding items list. I think Director Manuel had a big 0, but last committee. So good job keeping the list down. Can't wait to see this at 0, but I know we're adding stuff to it. So. Thanks.
Will you make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion to approve the outstanding items list. Thank you.
Great, and I see it as a failure as a chair. There's only one, so I'll only begrudgingly vote yes for this. So I'll call it to question.
Chair Bressie, I'm just waiting for Councillor Blackburn's vote.
I don't see him on screen. I'm not hearing him call. Oh, there he is.
I didn't get the vote come up, so I'll just verbally vote in favor.
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn.
Great, and with that, I will thank everybody for all the damn energy they brought to this meeting and call it adjourned. I think our next one is corporate services after a brief break.
Yes, Dylan, we are cooperative. I think we're going to have a 5-minute break, so we're going to start 10:20.